The tunnel sat abandoned, its gaping maw like a wound carved into the mountainside. Time had forgotten it, but the stories it birthed had not faded. The black void within beckoned those who dared to seek out the truth behind the legends. The air around it was unnaturally still, as though the world itself held its breath, anticipating something dreadful. Vines wrapped the structure in a grip that seemed almost possessive, and when cracks spiderwebbed across the stone, remnants of years left to rot. Yet, no matter how much nature tried to reclaim it, the tunnel exuded an aura of defiance, as if it belonged not to the earth, but to something far older, far darker. The first recorded tragedy occurred decades ago. A freight train carrying passengers had entered the tunnel, of its steel body slicing through the mountain like a needle. But it never emerged. Rescue teams found the wreckage days later, deep within the tunnel. And the scene was a nightmare: cars derailed, twisted into grotesque shapes, and bodies scattered as though some immense force had plucked them apart. Among survivors, if they could be called that, were few. They spoke of shadows that moved independently, of whispers that sounded like their own voices calling to them. Some could no longer speak at all, their minds shattered by what they had endured. The official report blamed a structural failure, a collapse of stone, but the locals knew better. Something had awakened. The tunnel became a forbidden place. The brave, or foolish, continued to test its resolve, venturing inside to disprove the stories or to boast of their fearlessness. Most returned shaken, with tales of inexplicable phenomena. And some heard their names whispered, though their companions swore they hadn't spoken. Others described the feeling of being watched, of their every step dogged by an unseen presence. A few never returned at all. What emerged, instead, were rumors of a creature that lurked within, a being that could twist reality to trap its prey. The disappearances began to escalate. Entire groups vanished without a trace, and those few who made it back alive were irrevocably changed. One man staggered out of the tunnel, his clothes torn and his eyes wild. He screamed incoherently about faces in the dark, about claws that raked the air inches from his skin. He could provide no coherent account of what had happened to his friends. Days later, he was found in his home, a noose around his neck, a cryptic phrase scrawled on the wall in his blood. "It sees you when you close your eyes." The killings were more than brutal. They were obscene, acts of violence that defied logic or humanity. Some victims were found partially consumed, their bodies hollowed out as though something had feasted on their very essence. Others bore wounds that no known predator could have inflicted, long, deep gashes too uniform, too deliberate to be natural. One body, undiscovered miles from the tunnel's entrance, was contorted into an impossible position, its limbs folded as if by some great invisible hand. Police reports became exercises in futility, full of dead ends and grotesque details that no one could reconcile. The tunnel seemed to mock every attempt to uncover the truth, growing darker and more menacing with each new tragedy. With on, exploration attempts became organized as the mystery grew too large to ignore. Equipped cutting-edge technology and weaponry, teams entered the tunnel to unravel its secrets. Yet even these expeditions ended in failure. One video footage often degraded as soon as the teams crossed the threshold, with static and inexplicable distortions swallowing any useful images. On instruments failed to function, compasses spun wildly, and communications were severed without warning. Ghostida survivors described a strange warping of time and space, where distances felt longer, paths seemed to shift, and the tunnel itself seemed alive. One group reported finding symbols etched into the walls, symbols that pulsed with a faint, eerie glow. None of them could explain what the markings meant, but their presence was enough to instill a sense of overwhelming dread. There, the entity itself remained an enigma. Its form, as described by survivors, was more suggestion than certainty, a shifting mass of shadows and pale, undaven, featureless flesh, It seemed to exist just beyond the realm of clarity, as though reality struggled to define it. Those who claimed to have seen it spoke of a towering figure with limbs too long, its movements unnervingly fluid, almost serpentine. Its approach was heralded by a cacophony of sounds, the scrape of nails on stone, the distant hum of something ancient and alive, awe and the unmistakable feeling of being hunted. The tunnel became a magnet for the curious and the desperate. Paranormal enthusiasts arrived in droves, armed with cameras and recording devices, eager to capture evidence of the supernatural. Their arrogance often proved their undoing. The footage retrieved from abandoned cameras showed flickering lights, sudden darkness, and faint glimpses of a towering figure moving impossibly fast. In one particularly chilling recording, the camera fell to the ground, its lens cracked, and the audio captured the owner's final moments. A scream cut short, followed by a deep, guttural growl that seemed to shake the earth. The few locals who still lived near the tunnel adopted rituals to keep the darkness at bay. They left offerings at the entrance: candles, food, even livestock. These were acts of appeasement, desperate attempts to prevent whatever lurked within from venturing out. Some claimed the offerings worked, that the creature's hunger was sated for a time. But others argued that the sacrifices only made it stronger, feeding an insatiable appetite that would one day devour the entire village. The tunnel itself seemed to change over the years. As the entrance appeared larger, the darkness within deeper. The air around it grew heavier, charged with an almost electrical tension. Though those who ventured too close reported vivid hallucinations, visions of friends and loved ones calling to them from within. Their voices tinged with an unnatural echo. Some claimed to see reflections in the stone walls, faces that weren't their own, twisted and monstrous. These experiences only added to the tunnel's legend, cementing its reputation as a place of ultimate horror. As the years passed, the tunnel's hunger showed no signs of abating. Search parties sent to recover the missing found only blood and fragments of clothing. Authorities eventually declared the area a no-go zone, erecting barriers and issuing fines to trespassers. Yet the warnings did little to deter the thrill-seekers who continued to come. The tunnel seemed to exert a pull on them. A siren call that whispered promises of glory and discovery. But it was not glory they found within. Only death, and a darkness that defied understanding. The tunnel stands to this day, an unyielding monument to fear and the unknown. It waits, silent and patient, gone for the next foolhardy soul to step into its domain. And though the stories grow with each passing year, one truth remains constant. Whatever dwells in the tunnel is not of this world. It is a predator that thrives on the curious, the brave, and the lost. Not feeding just on flesh but on fear itself. The land around it is barren now, the air too thick to breathe, as though the tunnel's shadow extends beyond its physical bounds. In the end, the tunnel is more than a place. It is a testament to humanity's inability to leave the unknown alone. It exists as a reminder of the fragility of life, the thin veil between reality and nightmare. And for those who have heard its whispers, who have felt its cold breath on their necks, asunder there is no escape. It is always waiting, always watching, its hunger endless and insatiable.